In my 30 odd years in business journalism, one of the standout trends I have covered is the almost unexpected rise of India as an infotech power. But I think we journalists made much less noise about an equally magical trend, the growth of the Indian pharmaceutical space as the generics factory of the world. Today in our series, Latha and the Leaders, I'm joined by a person who has been instrumental in this fascinating growth of India's pharma sector and who also represents another trend I have followed as a business journalist, the rise of women entrepreneurs. Joining me now is Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, arguably India's first self-made woman entrepreneur and, of course, a pharmaceutical prima donna. Kiran, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks so much, Latha.
Well, I will be going through the rise and rise of Biocon and of the Indian pharmaceutical sector, but let me start on a somber note prompted by the global situation. Tell me, how seriously is Donald Trump's tariff going to challenge India's growth as the world generics maker? Right now, he has only attacked the developed world and the patented drugs. But are we in danger of being arm twisted into supplying cheaper drugs?
So let me start by saying, Latha, it's a pleasure to be part of this series. But I would also like to, make one statement, and that is, I don't like to be called a pharmaceutical company making generics only. I would like to also say that I have broken the path and basically made sure that we call ourselves a biopharma company, because we are the truly unique biopharma company in India, making both generics and, of course, to a much larger extent, biosimilars and novel biologics. But that apart, to your question about Trump and his tariffs, as you just heard, there is a court decision that actually has put a pause on all the tariffs that they have basically enforced or at least announced. And apart from the fact that the Trump administration has put a pause on most tariffs, there now appears to be a situation where tariffs themselves are being questioned as something that maybe the president doesn't have the powers to execute on. So let's wait for what's going to unfold, because we really don't know what's going to happen. But as far as whether the tariff holds or not, I think we should look at our space. Now, I think Trump clearly called out in his message in April that he was not targeting generics and biosimilars, because that comes under the Affordable Care Act, where he's clearly said that he wants to make pharmaceutical products more affordable by removing a number of aspects of pharma marketing that makes it very expensive. And he's referred to middlemen. He's referred to the fact that he sees a price difference between Europe and the US. And that's where he's targeting big pharma, saying, why is it so expensive in the US? So let's wait and see what happens at the end of it all, because there are going to be multiple lobbies, including an anti-tariff lobby. I think there's much more that's going to unfold. Having said that, I really believe that companies like ours are well positioned to play a big role in, providing health economics in a very sound way, whether it is to the US, whether it is to Europe, whether it is to the rest of the world. I believe that biosimilars and generics have a huge role to play in ensuring that health economics are optimal in the way they serve patients. So, just to give you that little more expansion on that phrase, 80% by volume of prescriptions in US are generics and biosimilars. By value, of course, it's the other way around. They only account for less than 20%. And therefore, you're really targeting 80% of value that is basically constituted by 20% of volume of patented drugs that are prescribed. So there is a little skewed algorithm which we need to look at. And I believe that in any case, I think biosimilars and generics have a huge role to play to maintain that equilibrium.
Okay, well, two things, Kiran. I am going to come to the biopharmaceuticals that you have charted a, fresh course. I'm coming to the Biocon story, the Syngene story, the biologic story in a bit. I just wanted the newsy bit covered journalist that I am. And another point I want to tell my viewers, if you're not wondering why Latha and the Leaders is not with an in-person guest, I must say Kiran was gracious enough to agree to come to our studio. She was going to be sitting next to us, and the entire CNBC TV18 and Moneycontrol entourage were ready to welcome her. But it's just that the Mumbai rains and the Bangalore rains spoilt her plans. But we are going to make the best of this. Okay, Kiran, going by what you just said, that yes, President Trump at the moment has actually been in favor of cheaper generics and cheaper drugs. But if he were to insist, just hypothetically, let me put that question to rest. If he were to insist that some drugs have to be manufactured there, can Indian pharma still make money? Or do you think we don't have to worry about that just yet?
So, Lata, I think most Indian companies have multiple manufacturing sites. Some of them are in the US, like even at Biocon. But I think what we also have to understand is that being fully integrated also gives us the agility to absorb some of the shocks that tariffs might give you. So that's the way I look at it. Most companies have factored some element of tariffs, but I think let's wait and see because I feel that we might just get away with a soft landing.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. Aapke muh mein ghee shakkar. Let's hope it works that way. Let me look at the positive side then. Trump has also been speaking about the Biosecure Act. He wants the US system to be less dependent on drugs from China. So, do you think there's an opportunity here rather than fear Trump? Is he going to be a lucky mascot?
No, I think there's a huge opportunity for India to benefit from the Biosecure Act. Everyone is looking at a China plus one strategy. And in the pharma sector, certainly both the US and India and other pharmaceutical nations, especially in Europe, are very dependent on key starting materials and APIs from China. And we are no exception. So I think we also have that reliance on China for these kind of products.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think India too is trying to basically pivot from that reliability on China and make its own key starting materials and APIs in a much bigger way. The PLI scheme was actually meant to basically serve that particular objective. And, there's always been that challenge that when you try and compete with China, it's very difficult because the Chinese cost structure is so opaque but so competitive that Indian companies find it very difficult to match those prices. But now with the Biosecure Act coming into play, I think US companies are clearly, working towards developing a second source, and that second source is definitely India. So it actually plays to our advantage. As far as biopharma is concerned, obviously there is absolutely no reliance on China. So that makes it a much more, a much stronger sector as far as I'm concerned. And there I think we can compete very effectively with any part of the world. And I truly believe that India and Biocon especially has a huge competitive advantage when it comes to biosimilars.
Okay. Well, with that, let me shift to policy. Since you anyway touched on PLI, the government is listening with, large ears as to how it can capitalize on this China plus one opportunity. What would you want from the government? I mean, right from R&D, PLI, what are the things they should be doing?
So apart from PLI, which I think is very welcome and very important, I think we need regulatory support. I think our regulations are still mired in the past and they are very onerous. I think we should be much more agile. We should not be having to get innumerable number of permissions and no objection certificates for manufacturing and exporting these products. So I do hope the government is listening to make sure that we really implement large scale regulatory reforms very rapidly.
When you say regulatory, you mean not just pollution, quality control, exports, value
I'm
add.
talking about CDSCO.
Include, okay. I'm wondering if even you mean tax and, even the financial regulatory superstructure, all
No,
that
I'm not.
needs to go soft.
No, I don't think it's really the financial regulatory structure because that's quite, supportive of exports. But really, it's the drug regulatory system, which is very onerous. For every import you make of any raw materials, you need kind of no objection certificates. For every export you make, you need no objection certificates. So why? Why do you need these multiple approvals? The moment you are a accredited company with a track record of exports, why would you want to do all this? And anyway, you're conforming to high quality standards, you're conforming to global standards. So why are we constantly having to receive a large number of unnecessary approvals at every step of the way?
Okay, I began this story because it is Latha and the leaders. I am going to look at the decadal growth. And like I pointed out, there was this magical, paradigm shift in the Indian pharmaceutical sector. In the mid 90s, we saw all the Dr. Reddy's and companies like yours coming up in the early 2000s. What is the next paradigm shift? What should the pharma sector be looking at?
Well, right now the pharma sector is looking at GLP-1s because that's the huge, huge opportunity. But having said that, it's not everybody's cup of tea because GLP-1s has a very complex supply chain. From starting with the API or the drug substance, which is very complex, and right up to the device which delivers the drug, to all the presentations that are involved, to sterile manufacturing, to oral dosage, which also is complex formulations. So there's a whole gamut of requirements when it comes to expertise and capacity, because there's no point trying to play in GLP-1s if you have a very small capacity. It has to be done at global scale because the demand and the market opportunity is gigantic. And I think if you really want to be a serious player, you have to be producing this at a very high scale. And I think fortunately, Biocon has had the benefit of being very focused on insulins, which is a related kind of sphere, where the technology is very similar, the fungibility of the manufacturing facilities is very similar, and we are in a position to basically be a very serious player when it comes to both insulins and GLP-1s. Of course, insulins has become a windfall opportunity for us because the two key insulin players, Novo and Lilly, are diverting their entire production to GLP-1s because obviously they have a short window of huge opportunity and they need to make sure that they milk it.
Okay.
So I think from that point of view, they have basically said they will only be providing insulins in vials, and obviously nobody wants vials. And we therefore have that huge opportunity to fill that void, and that's what is very exciting for us, and that's really a windfall that we're trying to address very rapidly.
Okay. Kiran, actually, you nicely brought me from the macro to the micro. I was going to ask you about your whole approach to diabetes. You were the one who made this windfall opportunity by going from an enzyme maker to insulin glargine, and it was how many shows have we filled speaking about that? So tell us, how will you change your approach to diabetes treatment per se now that semaglutide, the one that's holding forth, is going off patent in what, a year or so? What is your diabetes plan?
So, this is a new segment which is being referred to as diabesity.
Okay.
Okay. If you remember, Latha, I ventured into insulins way back in the year 2000, when my whole raison d'etre for making insulin was that India had the world's largest burden of diabetes, and we were importing all our insulins. And, tragically, we were having to use animal insulin instead of recombinant human insulin, which was so expensive. So, as a biotech company, I felt I had to do something about it, and we developed India's first recombinant human insulin. And that was our starting point for insulins. And then, of course, we went into insulin analogs and biosimilar insulins. And we had the great, proud privilege of having the world's first US FDA approval for an interchangeable insulin glargine, which has now become a very important product for us. And as I just mentioned, the demand is just surging. And then, of course, we developed other insulin analogs. Having said that, Biocon also is the first company to have its first GLP-1, which is liraglutide, approved in an ICH market like UK. And now, of course, it's approved in Europe, and we expect the US approval very soon. And of course, semaglutide, like everybody else, is also in our pipeline under development, and we are very confident that we will be a very significant player in semaglutide. And like I just mentioned to you, to be a significant player, you need volume, you need capacity, you need a good product, and you need to be approved in many of these key markets. Of course, the markets that are opening up end of next year are going to be key emerging markets and Canada. But the big markets of US and Europe will only open up in 2031. So up until then, there's a huge market that will be unlocked, because many of those markets are not being served right now by Novo and Lilly. So I'm really excited about this huge, again, windfall opportunity that all companies are waiting for. And it's going to be a great, attractive opportunity for many Indian companies apart from Biocon.
Well, you've thrown many questions in the process of answering this, but what has captured my attention is diobesity. Well, that will have a lot of takers, the last part of the word, obesity. Are you going directly into obesity drugs itself?
Well, semaglutide has two versions, right? One is for diabetes and one is for obesity. And of course, obesity is the bigger opportunity. And all companies are looking at this. So obviously, companies like ours will also be offering many presentations which span across both diabetes and obesity.
Okay. Okay, this is a largely stock market investing audience that's watching you. So give us a little more in terms of numbers, either revenue types or in terms of number of drugs. What's the plan of launch till 2030? Since you say that you're almost going to be launching a drug a year, or at least in several countries, give us your plan, your timetable.
So if I look at the Biocon group right now, we are almost touching $2 billion in top line. That's what we declared in FY24. And obviously, we have very significant growth prospects across our businesses. As I mentioned, the biosimilars business is really on a strong growth trajectory, thanks to all the antibody pipeline that we have. As you know, we've got significant market share in the oncology segment. As you know, we also are now seeing a huge surge demand for insulin analogs and insulin itself. And of course, Biocon itself has a huge, demand for its GLP-1s, starting with liraglutide and very soon semaglutide. And of course, Syngene is looking at building a very strong business in its CDMO
Yes.
opportunity. So across the board, we have very large growth opportunities, and we are hoping that we will be able to really perform in a very strong way and you know unlock all these opportunities in a very capable way, because we have everything that it takes to actually succeed in every one of these spaces that I talked about.
Okay. Now, can you just, I'll get this detail out of the way. You purchased Viatris, and that also meant that Biocon now has a large debt. What is the debt reduction plan?
So first and foremost, I want to, start by saying that the acquisition was a transformational one.
Okay.
I think it has been the largest acquisition in the history of Indian pharmaceuticals.
Yes, yes, it is.
And I think it was very important that we made that acquisition, because today, thanks to that, we are now a fully integrated biopharmaceutical company with a direct footprint in 120 countries, with one of the largest pipelines of products, both in the market and under development. And like you earlier mentioned, Latha, we have seen we are preparing for a launch every year of a product. But more than that, we've had a very successful launch, even as we speak, when it comes to the biosimilar version of Stellara
Okay.
or Ustekinumab. I think this is the first launch we have handled ourselves, and I can tell you we are very pleased with the way we've launched it. We have signed up with all the major formularies, and we are seeing a good pull through. And we believe that we will be very, very successful going forward in all the segments that we operate in. The next most exciting product is going to be Aflibercept, where we have settled with Regeneron. And as you know, we now have a visible timeline of being in the market by next, middle of next year, and if not earlier. But I think we've got a great lineup of products. Now, when it comes to the debt, I think there is much ado about nothing when it comes to the debt. I think the debt is very easily serviceable. But having said that, for some reason, I think they've seen us as a debt-free company,
Yeah.
and therefore they want us to not have this level of debt.
Okay.
Okay. And this is something that we are now really addressing very rapidly, because we also, I mean, me also as an entrepreneur, I don't like a certain level of debt, even though we can service it quite comfortably. So we have actually, we are in the process of a QIP and other options of fundraise, just to basically bring our debt levels down to a certain level. And the nice thing about what we are doing is that we are actually retiring, venture debt
Okay.
and converting it into equity. So basically, Biocon will hold greater equity in biologics. So it's not like returning a bank debt.
Okay.
It is really very productively converting a venture debt into equity, which I think is the right thing to do. So I'm not too worried about the debt aspect. I think the debt is going to be very easily handled by us. And you are already seeing that even at the current level of debt, this quarter was a great quarter. We've actually declared a good profit despite all the provisioning that we've had to do for those venture
Yes.
debts. And once you retire those debts, obviously it's just going to unleash more profits.
Yeah.
And therefore I believe that we are in a good position.
Okay. No, actually, every reply of yours throws many questions. Just let me get again this detailed out of the way. This time, your generics did very well because Revlimid gave you, a windfall. Are you seeing pricing pressure there? Will there be a couple of quarters where margins may be under pressure?
So, the good thing is, if you look at our business, it's a very well balanced business, Lata. 60% of our business is coming from biosimilars.
Okay.
Okay. And then the remaining is coming from research services and generics. Now, of course, generics had a windfall of Revlimid, just like it had for every company. I mean, every company is going to now be challenged with the market opening up and the Revlimid pricing not being where it is today.
Yeah.
So I don't think Biocon is alone in the Revlimid story. That's why you saw all these windfall profits
Yeah.
in all the companies, whether it was Dr. Reddy's, whether it was, Riders, whether it was any of the companies who settled and got this window of opportunity to have this high pricing. And so did Biocon in its
Yeah.
own way. But obviously, we are prepared for the prices of Revlimid to fall. But having said that, of course, there are other opportunities that are opening up, like the GLP-1s. Liraglutide is a big opportunity
Yes.
for us. Copaxone is a good opportunity for us. And of course, next year, semaglutide becomes a big opportunity. So generics may not have the same kind of windfall profit that it had this quarter, but it's a much smaller part of our business, if you must know.
Yeah. Yeah. Something.
But biosimilars is a huge part of our business, and we had a very profitable quarter this quarter,
Yeah.
and it continues to perform.
Yes.
So I expect the biosimilars to counterbalance the windfall that we had
Revlimid.
in generics with biosimilars. And then, of course, Syngene is also poised to do well in the CDMO space. So overall, I think what is nice about Biocon is the kind of checks and balances and the nice balancing of businesses that we have that makes up for one part of the business which might be lagging with a huge surge of another part of the business.
No, that's always been the hallmark of your success and many successful companies. The ability to diversify and balance, balance
Exactly.
various products. I take your point on that. But just to complete the point on biologics, I know you're betting big on it, and it's sounding as attractive to many big investors. For instance, for Serum Institute, Serum has evinced interest. Do we see them taking a bigger stake? Do you really have to go the equity way if somebody is so willing to put in money?
No, I must remind you that the whole serum relationship was based on vaccines,
Okay.
when it started.
Okay.
And, in hindsight, I think it was the right thing for both companies not to pursue vaccines because, as you know, COVID vaccines had, again, a windfall at one stage, but today it's not in a good shape. And when we actually discussed Serum taking a big stake in Biocon Biologics, it was based on ascribing value to the vaccines business.
Okay. Okay.
But at that time, we realized that maybe it was not the right thing to do. And we mutually called off that route of investing. So basically, Serum invested $300 million in cash rather than ascribing it to the value of vaccines.
Okay.
And that's a small stake in Biocon Biologics. So it's not I mean, they're welcome to invest more, but it's not going to be the way that we look at, going forward in terms of vaccines.
Okay. Okay. But Kiran, now this question should have been in the first, but then because of Trump, we went a different way in our conversation. You have split yourselves into three companies: Syngene for contract research, Biocon for pharmaceuticals, and Biologics for the biosimilars. Will you always be three companies? Will there be a point when you may want to merge any two?
So right now we have Biocon, which is the parent company, and it basically owns a little over 50% of Syngene and about 75% of
Biologics.
biologics. And of course, as you know, we've also made an announcement that whilst we want to, look at an IPO for biologics, the board has also asked us to evaluate other options because of market volatility, including a merger of biologics with Biocon. So I think if you look at the way we've constructed these opportunities, I think we will take the right decision at the right time, in a few months' time, in fact, to decide what is the best preferred option.
Okay. What would your own leaning be? Would you want the three babies to go separately? Because you strongly supported when you allowed Syngene to move out of the mother company for good reason.
Yeah, but Syngene is still a separate company.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
listed company
So
and it will always
I
be,
agree. I agree. What
I
I'm
think the
asking,
question, yeah, so the question we are just addressing is the Biocon
biologics.
biologics business.
I get it.
And what we are really evaluating are the synergies, the size of the business, and whether it makes sense to merge or whether it makes sense to IPO. So give us a little bit of time because it's not appropriate for me to say at this time what my preference is. I think there's a committee looking into this and we will be driven by the committee decision.
Okay. But you could also be looking at strategic investors.
I'm not that fond of strategic investors at this stage because I think we have such a huge opportunity, Lata.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity right now, we are in the top five when it comes to biosimilars.
Yes.
And I want to be right at the top in 5 years.
Okay.
I don't want a strategic investor to spoil that aspiration.
No, no, I know that way back in the late 90s, you bought back your company from Unilever. You're not
Yeah.
someone who's going to let go. That's not your DNA. I mean,
And
anyone
I'm
who's.
very proud for for Biocon and for the country. I really want us to build a global company from India,
Okay.
and that's what I'm really focused on.
Okay, okay. Well, let me go back now to your story itself. I would assume, well, maybe not like me, but like many of us, born to middle class parents and seen your father bring home a salary every day. What is that quality that allows one to become an entrepreneur?
I always call myself an accidental
Yes, I
entrepreneur
heard that.
because I actually came back to India from Australia as a qualified brewmaster, and I thought I would easily get a job, but that was not to be because there was a huge gender bias, and I just couldn't get a job, and so I created my own job. And that's why I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because it was an accidental encounter with an Irish
Yes.
biotech entrepreneur who said, "Why don't you join me?" And I said, "What do I have to lose? And let me do it." So I think that was what made me an entrepreneur. But having sort of come from a middle class family, I know the value of money. Okay. And so I don't splurge. And my late husband, John Shaw, who you knew,
Yes.
he used to always say, Biocon is scientifically aggressive but financially frugal. So I
Well
love
said.
that phrase. I love that phrase. And he was Scottish, so he was very financially frugal. And he would always make sure that we didn't overspend in anything we did. So even when we made the acquisition, of course, he balked a bit. Fortunately, he was alive at the time when we made the acquisition. But when I discussed it with him and I told him how important it was, he said, "Go for it, Kiran, but make sure that you don't bet the bank on it."
Oh,
So he said, so I told him the kind of way we were going to structure the debt. He said, "Yes, you can service it, so that's fine.
okay.
But make sure that you drive this business well so that it can service the debt." And that's what I've been doing. So I listen to John's very wise words all the time.
I can assure you that investors who are listening to you are doubly happy to listen to this. They know their money is safe and no one's splurging out there.
And I've always, rewarded my investors. Whatever said and done, I think my track record of rewarding investors over time has been good. And I always believe in doing that because I realize that this is a big decision I took. People are nervous, but I'm very confident that this will be a huge success.
What's your winning formula?
I think it is really about thinking ahead of the curve and making sure that you execute on delivery. So I think that has to be the way you have to look at your business. You take a calculated risk and make sure that you keep mitigating that risk and making sure then it translates into huge success.
No, no, being ahead of the curve is very important because in many places you've kind of, uh, caught on to something that others followed. When I spoke to Rajiv Bajaj on a similar interview, he said Bajaj is actually a 21, 22% margin company. Though we report 20%, that 1 or 2% is for experimenting. In his case, he says, that helps me keep a startup within the legacy company. In your case, it looks like jumping to the incoming new thing is
Yeah.
your winning formula.
Yeah, I think you've said it very well, Lata, because I've always wanted to differentiate. I never want to be a me too.
Yeah.
I always want to lead, not follow.
Okay.
So that's the way I've always looked at opportunities. I've challenged the status quo, and when I see the sector going a certain way, I want to go the other way,
Okay.
because that's the way you stand out. That's the way you take that calculated risk, and then you are a leader. You know, that's the way I look at my business strategy.
In another thing that you stand out is your scarves. You're not that much a sari person, you're a scarves person, which is why today I didn't wear a sari. I wanted to, I wanted to blend into the company. Why this fascination? Anything about your sartorial choices?
Well, as you know, for a long time, I've been an entrepreneur who's been traveling globally quite a lot. And as a woman that you have to dress in a way that allows you to dress elegantly. And I always feel that embellishing your outfit with a scarf makes it look that much more fancy, and it doesn't cost very much, and it just makes it look so much better. So I always like to dress up my clothes with a scarf
Okay.
and give it that touch of difference.
Okay. No, you stand out and the scarves stand out too. Kiran, Bangalore, your place is also a haven of startups. Do you see a lot of biotech or pharma startups? Do you see a lot of hope for India in them?
Actually, Lata, thanks for bringing that up. I am really excited with what I'm seeing in life sciences and biotech startups. Okay. I have always told young people that biology is the new frontier, thanks to technology. Okay. Technology enabled biology is the most exciting area to be a startup entrepreneur. And there's so much happening. I myself have co-founded a CAR T company in cell and gene therapy
Oh,
called Immunil. I have also supported a number of startups in the Bangalore area. One of them is a company called Bugworks, which is developing an antimicrobial resistant drug. I've supported a very interesting startup started by my former R&D head called C6 Energy, which is trying to make biofuels from seaweed through ocean farming.
okay, okay.
And then there are other companies in synthetic biology that I've supported. There are called String Bio. There's another several companies which are developing some amazing stuff. An air purifier using algae. There's another company started by Dr. Vijay Chandru called CRISPR Bits that is developing some very unique diagnostics using gene editing, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot happening. Zumator is another company that's developing novel biologics. So, when you look at all these companies, there's a lot happening, but the only problem is all life sciences companies are gestational in
Oh,
terms of taking that idea to the market. It takes much longer than an IT idea, right?
okay, okay.
And so there's no patient capital available in our country,
No,
and therefore everyone's in a hurry to get a return, and life science startups take a much longer time. So I think the government has done a great job of providing that seed capital and the early capital. But venture funds have not provided that patient capital for these companies to scale up. And that's what I'm trying to see whether we can do something about it. But I'm very excited, about what's happening. And we have huge talent in this country in life
No,
sciences.
I think family offices are mushrooming, and so patient capital is round the corner. Bangalore itself may be a haven for that. So we'll bide our time. Kiran, the one thing which investors may be thinking about is succession. Whether it's professionally run or whether it's a promoter-led company, succession is a thought. Now, of course, you can go on strongly for over a decade now. You look good to do that. But what after that? Any succession plans?
So first and foremost, Lata, as far as Biocon Group is concerned, I have a very professionally run company, right? So, God forbid anything happens to me, the company and the business is in sound hands because these are very professional teams. They're doing an excellent job, whether it's biologics, whether it's Biocon, or whether it's Syngene. So I don't think you should worry about the company itself. We are talking only about board succession. As you know, I have a great board. Again, the board will decide how I get succeeded. If anything were to happen to me, I hope I'm there for at least a good 5 years minimum.
No, no.
But I do have some ideas about my own succession plans. I have family members who are very, very capable, whom I'm trying to groom to see if some of them could take, if they could take over from me. So I think there is a good thought behind all this, but I don't think anyone needs to worry about what will happen to the company.
No, no one is worried. People will be only curious at this point in time.
Yeah, but I think at the right time, I will decide who can succeed me if it is from the family.
Okay. All right. Give me a headline. What is the next big thing for Biocon or the next big thing for Kiran Shaw?
So the next big thing for Biocon, of course, is to get right to the top as a biosimilars behemoth.
Yes.
For me personally, I just want to make sure that I get to focus on the business in a way that can keep me ahead of the curve.
Okay. Oh, you will. Kiran, it's so good to hear that there are so many life, companies that you are investing in, bio companies, biological companies that you're investing in. May a dozen, 100, a million Kirans bloom from the ventures that you are encouraging. It's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us on Latha and the Leaders.
Thank you, Latha. It was a great pleasure.